Started. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Autumn Sullivan. I'm the Marketing Director at Mobilization Funding. Today, we are going to talk about how to get paid and what to do when you don't, specifically for construction contractors. I am super excited to have Lori Drake, who is the manager for Levelset's payment professional community, joining us today. And as always, I have Scott Pieper, the CEO and co-founder of Mobilization Funding. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about both of our businesses. Really super quick. I just wanted to let the audience know, if you have a question, please drop it in the chat or the Q&A. We want this to be a collaborative experience, a conversation. I'm going to turn my camera off, but I will be checking the Q&A in the chat. So if you have something, drop it in there. I'll pop back up and bring it to Lori and Scott's attention. Other than that, you guys can take it from here.
Thank you very much, Autumn. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. I thank you for joining us. This is a topic that is really near and dear to me. I know it's near and dear to our clients and any prospective clients we talk to. I also know from working so closely with Levelset and most of our clients who do use Levelset as well, I know Levelset sees this as a big topic and a place where we can focus on. Our goal today is to help everyone proactively find solutions for helping to solve this problem. Why the problem exists, some things you'll probably learn will be things you can do to make it much better, things that are out of your control. And Lori, I think, brings such a great perspective to this, and her experience specifically at Levelset, because she hears and sees and talks to the clients all the time. Lori, really thank you very much for joining us and welcome to our group. And I really appreciate you taking the time. And if you don't mind, why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself and why I think you're so uniquely qualified to kind of talk through this with me.
Thanks, Scott. It's nice to be here. Well, as you see, my name's Lori Drake. I am a brand new manager. We're creating a payment professionals community at Levelset. If you don't know what Levelset is, we understand the construction industry is very complicated. So we're trying to help people get rid of that headache that they have we have a software that provides liens, notices, and processes waivers. We have a community that I'm running up that we are doing meet and greets. We have free educational webinars and classes. We have a blog that has a bunch of information in there specifically for credit professionals, but there's a lot of information out there for subcontractors as well. I think that's it on my introduction there.
Awesome.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why I'm specifically qualified for this? Well, there's a few reasons. One, I was a credit manager for the last 20 years. For a supplier in the construction industry. So I have specific experience with contractors, GCs, subs, property owners, you name it. So I've seen the problems that people have and why they have them as far as getting paid. And then working with our customers through Levelset as well. We get a lot of information and new ways that we can find to help them all the time.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for that. I want to let everyone know why I think this is so important is because there's so many things we can do together to make this better. One is just having this topic of conversation. One of the things that really has drawn me to Levelset for our business and for our clients is we share a common theme and goal, both Mobilization Funding and Levelset, and that is to provide content to our clients and customers that far surpasses what we both do. Obviously, Levelset's in the business of helping you file liens. Mobilization's in the business of helping you provide working capital if you need it. But what we both start with is to provide you great information and great content to help you run a better business, be safer, not need money, actually, if you can help get yourself paid faster with the things you can do. And so we're going to talk today specifically about that. So let's get started. Autumn, if you can move to the next slide for me. Thank you. So why does it take so long for subcontractors to get paid? There's a lot of reasons. Lori, where do you think is the best place to start in that conversation?
The best place to start would be making sure that, it's kind of like that payment waterfall, but making sure that everybody who's on the job knows that you exist. Doing that would be definitely make sure you have a contract in writing. You would want to always send a preliminary notice on any job that you do. You don't really have to send it on the small ones, but anyone that you want to make sure that your risk is minimized. If you don't send a preliminary notice, the owner of the property, other subs, GC, anywhere in that payment waterfall, if they don't know you exist, they can't make sure that you get payments. So that I would say is the number one step.
Yeah, I would agree. The one other thing I would point out, and we have a lot of folks that we talk to they feel as though if they filed these preliminary notices, or if they did this excessive paperwork or steps, that it actually makes the subcontractor look bad. They're worried that they're going to look bad for their customer. Like, for example, I might paraphrase, oh man, I just don't want my project manager to have any headaches with their owner. They may not give me the next contract. I call that coming from a place of scarcity, being worried.
Mhm.
I think the way you phrase that, it was very important, because for you, it's coming from a place of abundance. Like, you're going to do great work, you're out there, and when you do great work, you expect to be paid. And so to keep honest people honest, we put locks on doors, and to keep money flowing where it's supposed to, you let people know you're there. And I think what you stated about the preliminary notices and the paperwork that is part of the construction industry and specific for subcontractors and suppliers to make sure they are protected is something everyone should do.
Absolutely. People get worried that they're not going to get jobs anymore if they send a notice. Home builders are a big case for that. I mean, they think that the home builder won't hire them again. They're going to move on to somebody else. The people that don't send those preliminary notices usually are the people that aren't going to get paid. If you do send it, they're not going to take time. They're going to, appreciate what you're doing and realize you're just following law. Same thing happens with the suppliers and our customers. They don't want us to send a notice because they think that we're going to make other people mad, but everybody does it. I mean, it is a standard in construction, and it is for everybody's safety. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't say anything bad until you get close to filing a lien, and then you're calling everybody and trying to get them paid. But I mean, the notices are very standard and they help everybody.
Yep. Is there anything in specific that you believe? Actually, let me ask this question. Can you talk just a little bit about how at Levelset, I think that a lot of our customers, the reason I'm bringing this up is a lot of customers will say, oh, it's just very difficult to understand the laws, the rules, the county, the state, the city, private versus public. What do I need to do? How does Levelset organize that so that clients can do it in an efficient way without having to hire another full-time employee?
Levelset has a great process for this. If you have software, you just upload all your job information to them and they take it from there. If you don't, you can manually upload your job information. Levelset determines what type of job it is. They put in the whole timeline for any notices that are supposed to go out or anything that you need on that. They personally find bonds, which are very difficult to find, so they get that information in for you. They can provide the waivers, so you want to send conditionals when you want payment, and then you can get unconditionals when you already have received it. This works really well for dealing with owners on the properties. If you send them a conditional, I mean, you can even just talk to them and say that you're going to be sending one. Then again, they'll know that you're on the job, and they'll make sure that their GC that they're paying gets a release saying that they've paid the next person on. So Levelset has a great process in doing all this that really takes all that headache away from you. When I was a customer for them, it was about 4 years. They have this dashboard and all your jobs show up there and it shows the date. And all you do is say no, yes, no, yes, no, yes. And that's it. I mean, I was done within like an hour, where it used to take me about 4 days to do notices. So their process setup is really easy. It's very understandable. And it definitely takes the headache away. The law does change different states. I know Texas right now, they're trying to change the law, getting rid of a second notice, which would be a really bad thing. But everything on that dashboard is, I mean, it's easy to understand. They'll even put warnings if somebody else filed a lien on that property. They'll put new information. Hey, we have a new GC that we found on this property that someone else is using. So they always make sure you have the right information when you need it.
And one other thing I wanted to add to what you said, and I think if you think about why the problem exists, look, there's bad general contractors, there's bad owners, there's bad projects, all that. But the majority of the issues stem from the fact of the way that construction is just set up. I mean, look, the cash flow of the overall construction setup is not ideal for anyone. It's really not ideal for the owners. It's not ideal for the general contractors, and it's certainly not ideal for the subs. The bank that's financing the project overall, which is typically some type of bank or financial institution or government entity, they're financing it. And the owners and developers, they've put a lot of work in before that project goes out of the ground. They usually have a lot of their own cash in long before they can even access the money from the bank or their financing or the government. The GC's sort of in the same boat. They have to do and manage and put together schedules. And of course, the subcontractors, they're doing all the work, getting it checked, sometimes checked 2 and 3 times, then getting it approved. And then you're going to wait 30 or more days to get done. So the nature of the problems exists because of the big macro factors around cash flow. But we're going to go to the next slide. We're going to talk about some of the things that you can do to really make this move a lot faster from the start. So I'll touch on this a little bit, if you don't mind, Lori, just in summary, and then ask you, I have a couple questions for you.
No problem.
The most important thing is follow every document everything and put everything you do in writing. If it's daily logs, if it's a weekly log, if it's something specific to your contract that is in your contract that you need to follow, make sure you follow those rules and do it exactly the right way. I had an old boss that used to tell me, Scott, I can protect you from anything. You just have to make yourself bulletproof. So he'd say, don't lie on your expense report. If you yell at somebody, I could probably give a good reason as to why you yelled at them. Maybe they deserved it, maybe they didn't, but I can't protect you from cheating your expense report, So what I mean by that is if you're in the construction world and you have a contract that says you need to do something specific each day or each week, then do it for sure. Keep yourself bulletproof. Because if there is a problem, I promise you, they're going to go back to those things that are in your contract that you are not doing. And they're going to be the first thing that comes down the hill to you in a negative way. One other thing, I think you can check and you should look at the credit worthiness of your general contractor. Obviously, if you're working on a public project that is the government entity or municipality, you can probably feel a little more comfortable. There's usually probably a bond in place, a payment bond. You can make sure of those things. But if you're working on a private project, make sure your general contractor is also credit worthy. You can do that a number of different ways. For example, Lori, can you talk through a little bit of the process that you guys recommend or use to check the credit worthiness of the GC?
We actually just finished, I believe, launched even last week, easy and not foolproof, but very informative way to do that. It's a page on our website that's called Contractor Profiles. Anybody that's ever had a job in our system ever with that GC, or anybody that's ever had issues with that GC or any experience whatsoever, it automatically shows under their contractor profile how many jobs they've had a year, how they did on those jobs, who's working with them, what type of jobs. It also has the negative. I mean, people are allowed to leave feedback, telling them, sometimes they'll talk about the payment process. Oh, this GC made me do it all online. I couldn't figure out their website. I couldn't get it submitted, or this one tells me they need AIA forms, but they really just need an invoice. It gives you a whole bunch of information that you really can't find anywhere else. It's kind of like a trade reference on the GC, but with a lot more information.
There's also one thing that's very rarely ever used in the subcontracting by a subcontractor, but is used by factoring companies all the time, and that's credit insurance. Obviously, factoring in many ways sometimes can be looked at as a little bit tough from subcontractors to be used, and everybody may have different preferences or individuals, and I'm not here to talk about that. But one of the things that factoring companies do that they do well with construction is they usually get some type of credit insurance. And what that means is if they're going to buy an invoice from your general contractor that you submit, they want to make sure that this general contractor is going to pay you. And so what they'll do is they'll look at the credit worthiness of that general contractor through an insurance company often. And that insurance company, like AIG or Euler Hermes, a very large insurance company, will say, yeah, we will insure the receivable coming from that general contractor up to X amount, dollar amount. And yes, the factoring companies buy that insurance, but there's nothing that could stop you from buying that insurance either, or partnering with an insurance broker that you may already work with and for your other regular general liability policies or other that can contact them, that could at least give you an idea of what credit rating and what credit amount they would insure that general contractor for. For example, if you have a $2 million contract and your average pay application is going to be 200 grand a month, but you go to the insurance company and they're only going to give you $50,000 of credit for that particular general contractor, meaning they would only insure up to $50,000 for that general contractor, that's going to tell you something different than if they came back to you and told you they would insure up to $500,000 from that general contractor.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean you're not going to get paid. Doesn't even mean the general contractor is bad. It just means it's a measuring stick that you can use to help give you a guide of what type of cautionary reactions you should maintain while you're working on that project for that general contractor, especially if you don't have a relationship with them, or if you're meeting them for the first time or working out of town for one. Lori, have you had any experience around those type of things or anything to add related to that?
So, I mean, not to talk away from credit insurance, but when you're credit manager in construction, we actually don't like dealing with credit insurance. There always seems to be something that holds up payment, whether they aren't talking to the GC or they're not getting a hold of somebody or somebody didn't do the right paperwork. There always seems to be an issue from what we've found. We talked about this a couple months ago with some of our experts, and none of us have had good experience with it. It doesn't mean that, you know, they don't always pay on time. Maybe they do, and we've just had the bad cases, but it isn't anything that we direct anybody towards. So it's kind of hard for me to say anything positive on that.
Yeah, no, look, insurance, I think credit insurance has the same type of connotation that a lot of insurance does. You know, you buy it, you hope to use it, you hope you never have to use it, but when you do, they figure out a way to deny it.
Yeah.
But what I do think they do a good job of is at least being able to give you a guide of information up front. Doesn't mean you have to buy the insurance policy, but it would be good to have a relationship one that you could get the information up front of what they would insure someone for.
Yeah.
And then use that as a guide or a free tool.
Definitely.
Yeah. Tracking deadlines, submitting any paperwork, keeping things on the right schedule, those are key. How can we speed up payment? What can specifically a subcontractor do? Lori, why don't you touch on this one a little bit?
So as I mentioned earlier, the preliminary notices, I would do that on every job, even if the state doesn't require it. Like I said, that is going to tell the property owner that you're there, that you exist. So they're going to do everything they can to make sure you get paid. Using conditional waivers when you send in an invoice or a pay application, they have to sign it. So them signing it is an acknowledgement of what you're billing them. If they have any issues signing that, they're going to call you and say, hey, we can't accept your invoice or your pay app. You're going to have to do this or this. So getting that conditional signed as soon as you submit that invoice is definitely good for you. Sending demands for payment. Once you send and confirm that they have your pay application, whatever your terms are with that GC, usually like 15, 20 days, on the 16th day, send them a demand, remind them that you're still sitting here waiting. People worry that they're going to get annoyed if you contact them too many times, but the ones that annoy, the ones that reach out, the ones that ask the questions are the ones that get paid faster. If you're not asking, then they're not worried about it. Another thing is taking online and credit card payments. Paper checks are really slow. They get lost in the mail. They may be dated and not sent to a week later. If you can get someone that'll say they pay you and they pay online, you're going to have the money right then. Additionally, you'll probably get it sooner because most GCs love to pay with credit card, especially American Express. They get the rewards off of it and they get another 30 days to pay their credit card bill. So if you can find any way to do that, it's definitely going to be in your favor.
One thing I'd like to add to this too is it does seem like these things can be cumbersome, or there may be a perception that this is negative and looks bad on you and why are you doing that to your customer? And I'll tell you, you know what, like if you're doing a great job and you're focused on performance and your job and performance on that work site is top notch and great, and you're doing everything you said you would, and you're doing everything you're contracted to do, and you're a good customer to them and they're a good customer to you, when you're just what I would call dotting your I's and crossing your T's with these type of specific things, it's not a problem and it's not even annoying.
Right.
What's annoying is if you're doing a bad job or you're late, you're not doing what you need to do from a performance perspective, but then also dotting every I and crossing every T. That's where I think the line is between annoying and just being and actually respected. I think you'll be much more respected if you're doing all these things when you're doing a great job too, and you won't be annoying. But it certainly is annoying if they're dealing with these types of things, but you're not doing a good job on the project too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it's important when you do submit these things to let people know how good of a job you are doing. Communicate, let them know you're doing a great job. You finish these things ahead of it. Overly communicate, just like you're overly communicating they owe you money and that you're on the job. You can overly communicate. You can't really overly communicate enough on how good of a job you're doing too, and point that out. In other words, drive that narrative for yourself so that people are reading and seeing things about you in a positive way on a daily and weekly basis. So when they also get a preliminary notice that you're on the job, or you're asking for a conditional waiver, or you're saying I'm owed money, it's counteracting and working alongside all the positive messages too.
I totally agree with that. I can't tell you how many times as a credit manager, I didn't know an account. Somebody would mention they were a customer or talking about a customer. The only accounts that stuck in my brain were the ones that I had to call on, the ones that weren't paying their bills on time. So letting them know that you're out there by telling them how good of a job you are doing is a great idea, because if you're new to them, they have a million different jobs that they're working on. They're probably not even paying attention to it unless they hear from somebody that talks about you. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on. If your payments are late, what can you do? Laura, again, I don't want to pass this to you, but yours is really right in your wheelhouse. You know this much better than I, and you're the expert. So I'll let you kind of go on this one.
All right, thank you. So we put there the titles of many different options that you could take. Mechanics lien law is the most popular one. Just make sure you know in your state when you have to send a preliminary, when you send a first or second, when you file a lien, when you have to foreclose on a lien. You just have, they're very state specific. If you need any help with that, if you just type Levelset and whatever state you're in, it's going to pop up all the rules and all the forms that you're ever going to need. So feel free to do that, or feel free to reach out to ask more questions. Construction contract law, it depends what's in your contract. If somebody, like we said, get everything in writing. If you have a contract that says that they're supposed to pay you in so many amount of days, whatever the terms are, no matter what, it's a breach. If they don't pay you when they're supposed to, if they don't do what they're supposed to do, no matter what, even the smallest detail, it's a breach of contract. So you can actually file suit on that. Not necessarily the best way to go about if you want to remain a customer or a subcontractor for them, but it is a way to get recourse and get your money back. Prompt payment law, most states have this. I think it's 14 states that have this law. It's a great law. Basically, it says that even if your contract says 30 days, when you're working with the supplier, it says that usually you have 14 to 15 days to pay promptly. If they don't pay you in that time frame, you can file suit against them on that as well. Again, not the best thing to do if you want to remain a sub for them, but if you have any inclination that this person isn't going to pay you, even prior to sending notices, you can file suit on that and they continue to send notices. It's a very strong law that does get played out a lot. The trust fund statute is one of my favorite. In Texas, we use it all the time. Other states, you would have to look it up to make sure you have it. But basically, once an owner pays a GC, those funds are put into a trust fund. That GC is then supposed to pass those funds on to the sub to the supplier. If the funds get stopped anywhere between that payment chain, that is a violation of the trust fund. The trust fund, when you sue on it, you can hold anybody responsible that touches that fund. I mean, it could be the person that got the mail, opened the envelope, saw it was a check. That person's liable. Whoever they passed it off to post it is liable. Anybody is liable, civil as well as criminal. So it's always fun. The unjust enrichment is when one party benefits and the other party doesn't, or one benefits more than the other. Basically, if GC got paid and you didn't get paid, that's unjust. I haven't personally used this one because there was so many other directions to go, but it's kind of like the contract law. If you breach anything or if you get more benefit than somebody else does, there's always ways to file suit on that.
What I would add to that too, and I think these are all great things, what is really important is, and we've talked about this in some other webinars, spend the little bit of money up front and have a good attorney review your contract, because these are great options in the event of a disaster for you to use. But a lot of times your specific contract law might specifically work you out of your ability to use some of these different laws or policies, depending on where you are. For example, if you have a paid when paid, paid if paid clause that you've agreed to, it may impact your ability to utilize a prompt payment law, or it may impact your ability to utilize your terms with that general contractor are 30 days. You want to remove some of that ambiguity. That's an easy one to pick up on, but for 1 hour of an attorney's time to review your contract, to pick the 4, 5, or 6 main clauses that can keep you from a real disaster in the event of a problem that most GCs will negotiate around is important. The other thing I would say too is, to Lori's point about being a credit manager and only remembering the bad ones. If you are a subcontractor and you negotiate some terms in your contract, that GC is going to remember you. And they're also going to know that you paid attention and you looked into some of those things, and you're a little bit more savvy than someone who just signed the contract they sent. And it doesn't mean that one person's good or one person's bad. It just is human perception. And this is a world full of humans, and we all make mistakes and nobody's perfect. So it helps you to really go through those things. And in the event of a disaster, having an attorney work their way around some of these clauses just to your benefit, or at least to a mutual benefit for you and the GC, can be significantly beneficial to you from some of the big disasters. And look, in the subcontractor construction world, if you can avoid major problems on jobs, you can pretty much have a very successful business. It's that one project that turns into a disaster that can set you back a year, 2 years, or even more. So these are the types of things that I'm talking about, and Lori's bringing up to this conversation that we're trying to help you with. It's avoiding the disaster that can set you back years. At least get you to a neutral playing field.
One thing to add to that, when you're talking about having a lawyer review your contract and that, if you find that you do that a lot, not to sell Levelset again here, but we do offer a program called Legal Guard, where you just pay an annual fee, which is pretty small, and you have a lawyer that's there 24/7 for you. So if you ever need something reviewed, you don't have to worry about paying an hourly fee. You just have this one attorney that helps you out for the entire year. And I know that works a lot better for subcontractors, because sometimes those attorney fees can get pretty expensive, but reviewing contracts is definitely key. Getting by those pay if paid, pay when paid. There are some specifics that you definitely want to negotiate out of there.
All right, let's talk about asking your GC if you can get paid early. Do you have an opinion on that, Lori?
Do it always. I mean, not even necessarily early, but on time. Again, if you don't contact your GC, they're not even going to think about you. They're going to go on to the people that are bugging them so they can get them to stop bugging them. There is no reason why you can't say, hey, y'all approved my pay application. You have it scheduled to be paid out, and they say, oh, next Thursday or something. At least that way you'd have an understanding of when they're going to get paid, and you can, use your funds around that. But there is no reason why you should be afraid to call. They're not going to get mad that you called. It's definitely a way to keep you on their mind.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. I would say that if you can get paid earlier, you can look at prompt payments or ways to work around that. If it's beneficial to you from a cash flow perspective, great. I would just strongly encourage that you know what your margins are, you know what your operating free cash flow is, and that you're not just bringing in cash early at an expense or detriment to your business by giving away too much of your profit. That's all I would recommend on that.
Well, I'll say one more thing on that last one there. GCs have payment issues just like everyone else. A lot of times they even want to benefit off the payment, so they'll keep it in their savings account, gain interest on it before they pay out. If they know somebody's watching that, they can't do that, and they will have to pay it out. So keeping yourself on their mind is definitely going to be a big difference.
All right, some extra topics to cover. Let's see. Breaking the cycle from borrowing from one project to start the next. Know what your margin is so you can meet your goals, exact margin, and identify which projects are serving you and which ones are draining you. Great topics, good information. Lori, any opinions on any one of those three before I share a couple of mine?
So to break the cycle of borrowing from one and giving to another or starting another, it's part of the trust fund statute. Like I said, they're not supposed to do anything with that money. They're supposed to pass it on. but we call it robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's actually illegal to do. Once they get those funds, they're supposed to pass them on. So again, depending where you fall in getting paid by this person, there is legal recourse if needed to get that money.
What I would talk about as well as related to the margin is ahead of time, just build out your cash flow of your job. Not only know the margin, and there's a difference between margin and markup. For example, a lot of clients we talk to, they'll calculate their labor costs and they'll calculate their supply costs and they'll mark it up to some degree. And that's good. That is profit by definition if the costs exactly work out the way they are. As we all know, labor can fluctuate up or down. But what's also important is make sure you're adding your overhead costs, because if you do need some of that cash from your project to utilize to pay overhead costs like certain debt payments, any loan payments that you're utilizing for trucks or vehicles, or just administrative expenses internally for employees that aren't working or on a specific project, those are things that you need profit from your job for. And then also, as we all know, it takes a little while sometimes in the payment cycle to get to the point where the job is cash flow positive. It's paying for itself. So pulling cash off of the project too early before you actually have some of that free cash can really be a detriment. So just know what that is. We actually have a great tool on our website. You can go to it, to the resources page. It's an actual cash flow spreadsheet. We've designed it and built it specifically for construction. It has an entire instructional guide. It's totally free to download, and it's a great option for folks that don't have something specific that you can utilize, and you can break it down week by week and give yourself an idea of where you're at with that. And that will help you also to know if you want to take early payments on or when to pay things, et cetera, et cetera. Lori, anything else you want to add to this one?
I just want to say it kind of sounds like I've made this very legal and scary, but it's really not. The best thing that you can do is document everything, stay on top of your deadlines, make sure you keep in contact with people. I mean, it's really simple things. It just sounds like major things, but you just have to stay aware of what's going on with each project and everybody that's on it, and it'll make a big difference.
Yeah, it's just running a good business too.
Yeah.
It really is. I think too often I see the subcontractor world taking the brunt of the macro factors around construction and then feeling as though those problems are theirs only. It's really not. It's not your fault. It's not a subcontractor's fault. It's not the general's fault. It's the cash flow of the whole project, and making sure you do your part as a subcontractor to make sure you're protected yourself is nothing more than what you should be doing. And it's good business. And anyone that would make you feel bad about doing that is probably someone that's either not aware of what's going on, or maybe someone you don't even want to work with. But I would push back against that train of thought. Again, most important thing is do a great job, provide a great product, do what you're contracted to do, and then you have all the options in the world to demand payment and equal benefit back to you. Autumn, do we have any questions?
Hi. We do not. We had one question, and it was specifically about the paid when paid clause in contracts. Oh, we just got one. Hooray. Elizabeth asks, is there a particular benefit in sending a demand for payment or notice of intent to file lien?
I'll go. They are absolutely very different. The demand for payment doesn't really give a deadline unless you follow through with the deadline. You could say you're required to pay by May 31st. If it's June 1st and they haven't, then are you going to go back on your demand by just letting them do whatever? Or are you going to file a lawsuit because they didn't pay on time? So that one's kind of a catch-22. The notice of intent protects all your rights. It's just a, hey, heads up, you haven't paid yet. You got another 30 days to pay, unfortunately. But it doesn't do anything until it gets to the second notice, and that's where it gets more serious. So I would say the notice of intent is definitely your best step over a demand, because I used to send a lot of those, and it's not like we ever filed suit if they didn't pay on time. We would just go another avenue. So depending on the person that gets it, I think the legal one looks a little better and more in your favor.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of projects we're involved with all of our clients and customers. And I can tell you that the intent to lien is a document that's used far more than a demand for all the reasons Lori mentioned. And I would strongly suggest using the intent to lien for a couple of reasons. One, I promise the general contractor working on the same project in the same area knows exactly what that document is because they would utilize it if they weren't paid. So it's not something that is gonna be confrontational in my mind. It also means that it's not a poor reflection on the general contractor, it just means you haven't been paid. And maybe that actually helps your general contractor get paid from the owner faster or the bank inspector to release the payment. So a lot of times they can be used as, it can be very helpful for the general contractor, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's negative.
Mhm.
We have another question from Danny. How can I find out if the owner paid the prime contractor?
That's easy. Call them and ask. I used to do that all the time. If your GC says he's not getting paid, usually you can feel if they're telling you the truth or not, but even if you can't, contact the owner. Finding their phone numbers, you just Google it. I mean, Google has everything these days. Just Google their name, their address. A lot of times they wind up being doctors and medical clinics. There's a lot of ways to find their phone number, but you just call them and tell them who you are and that you just want to verify if they've paid the GC or not. Most are pretty understanding.
Yeah. And if it's a government or municipality and they're paying their prime contractor, for example, and it's a city or state government or FEMA, there's usually websites or the SAM system or the state or county public information that you can show that it's been paid or where the progress is. A lot of that is public information. It depends on, actually, it's all public information. It just depends on where it's published to. But there's usually a county, city, state, or federal government website that you can see all that information.
We have a comment. It's not quite a question, but it's a follow-up. I've suggested using the notice of intent on our slow payers, but usually by that time, my boss is so mad that he just wants to file the lien. Could either of you speak to that?
You know, it's kind of funny to say as a credit manager, because nobody considered us nice, but I think it's nicer to give them notice. Plus it's scary. They actually have something to look at that looks very legal. And a lot of them don't really know what it means. So they are more intended to pay that. If you just file a lien, you're spending more money with not necessarily needing to. I've had personal vendettas that I've had against people, and I can tell you I went straight to liens as well, but cost savings as well as just kind of training the customer, I would say the notice is your better choice.
I would agree with that too. I think sometimes some places you may have to file an intent to lien before you could file a lien also. Again, I don't know where the question's coming from or what part of the country, but you may have to do that. And if you don't, I do still think Lori's advice is what was well worth it. I think prior to getting so mad, I might have sent the notice when I was just starting to get mad, maybe. That would be my advice.
Okay, we don't have any other questions. If you have another question for us, please drop it in the Q&A. Or you can contact Lori and Scott privately. Thank you all so much for joining us. We will have a thank you email going out to all our participants tomorrow, and it will include a link to this video on YouTube, so you can refer back to it at any time. Lori, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah,
Scott,
I appreciate it.
I see you every day, but it's always a pleasure too. Oh,
Lori, thank you so much.
We have one quick last question from Peter. What service does Levelset sell? Lori, do you mind recapping that?
We're very strong on giving information for free. The product we do sell would be the Legal Guard, as well as the software that will track all your job deadlines. It'll send your notices, file your liens, provide you with your conditional and unconditional waivers. Anything that's focused on lien would be in that product. Other than that, I know we just started doing the Legal Guard, and it's just an annual fee, but the rest is free. Everything you look at, articles, classes, it's all free.
Yeah, I have to jump in and say that Levelset has an amazing website, super easy to navigate, and lots of free content. We also have a lot of free content on our website. Please check out our resource library. Again, both Levelset and mobilization funding, we believe in education should be free, so we make as much of it available as we can. So go check those resources out.
Yeah. I can tell you that we recommend all of our clients use Levelset to file these services. It's very economical, it's much more efficient, and there's really nothing worse than thinking you're doing it right and you miss a loophole and you can't even utilize what you were set out to do. So it really eliminates that risk. And you know, one individual in your company doing this across multiple different projects, there's just a lot of room for error. And it's a full-time position sometimes, or it's someone that's doing something else that's taking this on. And it's just, in almost every scenario I've talked to customers or seen, it's just not even economical to do. So I think it's worth the service to look at. And if you're not doing these things, it's definitely easiest to start right there.
I agree with that. Different states have so many different rules. I mean, if you're nationwide, you sell nationwide, it can get very confusing.
Yeah, and they change.
Yes.
The rules change all the time.
Yep.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I'll go ahead and we'll wrap this up. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.